This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Well, automotive startups must be breathing a sigh of relief today. Nate Anderson, who founded Hindenburg Research, announced he's disbanding the investment firm, which would short a company's stock and then publish damaging reports about its finances. Hindenburg has had a major impact on the auto industry, especially startups. It took down Lordstown Motors after it revealed the company misled investors about its demand and production capabilities. Hindenburg also accused Nikola Motors of misleading investors about the capabilities of its trucks, which led to founder and CEO Trevor Milton going to prison. And earlier this month, the firm accused Carvana of shady accounting. All told, Hindenburg's reports have led to nearly 100 individuals being civilly or criminally charged by regulators. The auto industry is facing big problems in Europe, and European automakers are practically begging the European Union for help. The ACEA, which is the European Automakers Lobbying Group, sent a letter to the EU saying it needs new regulations to cut CO2 emissions that are driven by the market, not by fines. It wants a strategy that will create economic growth, not curb it. It points out that EV sales are not progressing fast enough to meet the current regulations. And it says that paying heavy fines for missing CO2 targets will end up reducing the money that gets spent on R&D and other investments. The EU is notoriously bureaucratic and slow-moving, and so we have to wonder if it will move fast enough to save the European auto industry. And right on the heels of that letter, Reuters reports that Chinese automakers are keenly interested in buying the assembly plants that Volkswagen wants to shut down in Germany. As we've reported, VW wants to idle several plants, slash production, and reduce its workforce in Germany by 35,000 employees by 2030. Even though Chinese automakers could end up saving a bunch of those jobs, the idea of them taking over VW factories in Germany is highly sensitive. They want those plants because it would allow Chinese automakers to avoid the tariffs that the EU has slapped on imported Chinese-made EVs. And China views buying German factories as a long-term strategic investment. But Reuters quotes a union official as saying they would only be open to building cars with VW's joint venture partners in China, and that the cars would have to have the VW logo on them. Scout wants to bypass franchise dealers and sell cars directly to consumers in the U.S., and so does ACEA, the joint venture between Honda and Sony. But the National Auto Dealers Association says it's going to fight them every step of the way. Remember, each of the 50 U.S. states has its own franchise laws, and the NADA has said it will challenge Scout and ACEA in every state, which means the legal costs and the time it takes to litigate it all could take years. So that makes us wonder if either Scout or ACEA would try and take this all the way to the Supreme Court and get the car dealer franchise laws overturned by claiming it's a restraint of interstate trade. One thing's for sure, we're going to be talking about this story for some time to come. As we reported earlier this week, Chinese autonomous vehicle company Pony AI received permission from the Chinese government to operate platoons of autonomous trucks, and now another company just got the green light to do the same. KargoBot got permission to test platoons on certain sections of highways in Beijing. Autonomous platooning is where a lead semi-truck with a driver is followed by other semis without drivers.
Developing today's vehicles. Issues can happen in an instant. When's the best time to solve a problem? The minute you know you have one. Meet Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your secure, off-the-shelf solution empowering real-time collaboration for quick resolution. With Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your team can prevent issues before they can escalate. driver communication data and remote diagnostics to analyze and resolve your problems using OTA, allowing your executives oversight throughout the process. Wireless Neovi Cloud, your vehicle update solution in production and on the road. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
Land Rover faces even more competition from its Chinese joint venture partner. In November of last year, we reported that a brand of Chery is going to start selling SUVs in the UK that are similar to Land Rover vehicles, but undercut the price by as much as $18,000. And now another brand of Chery is going to launch a series of luxury off-road SUVs that will first go on sale in China, but they're also being developed for global markets. The brand is called Jetour, and it's already registered trademarks for 3 names, but previously said it has plans to launch 8 or 9 models. Not only will these compete with Land Rover, Chery's JV partner, but Jeep is a likely target, and so is Tank, which is a brand under Great Wall Motors that sells vehicles in China, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Jetour will hold a launch event for the new models sometime next week, so we should have more info soon. As we've reported, Stellantis is struggling, and that continued into the fourth quarter of last year. The automaker's global shipments declined 9% in the last 3 months of 2024 to about 1.4 million vehicles. In fact, shipments were down in all regions except for South America. In Asia, they were down 33%. In North America, they were down 28%. And in Europe, shipments fell by 6%. And Maserati had a particularly bad fourth quarter, with shipments slumping 55% to just 2,700 vehicles. But it's a different story for the Renault Group. It sold more than 2.2 million vehicles globally last year, including Dacia and Alpine, which is up 1.3% compared to 2023. The Renault brand sales were up 1.8%. Dacia was up 2.7%, and Alpine increased sales by 5.9% last year. The Dacia Sandero was also the best-selling vehicle in Europe last year, and it was a good year for EVs too. The group's electrified sales, including hybrids, increased 4.3% and now account for 35% of its total sales. American Honda wrapped up a pretty good year in 2024. Sales of 1.4 million vehicles were up 8.8%, easily outpacing the overall market. Hybrids did even better, shooting up 25%. And Lance Wolfer, the VP of Sales, says 2025 should be even better. He thinks American Honda sales, which includes Acura, will go up another 5% to 1.5 million vehicles. And he's especially excited that Honda will be building its own EVs in Ohio by the end of the year. As you know, the Honda Prologue, which is made by General Motors, outsold all of GM's EVs last year. Wolfer says the number one reason why customers said they bought the Prologue is that they trust the Honda brand. And speaking of Honda, but now it's global operations, not the US ones. It wants Nissan to buy out the shares that Renault has in Nissan. It's all part of the merger that Honda and Nissan are putting together. Bloomberg reports that Renault has a 37.5% ownership in Nissan, which is worth about $3.6 billion. Honda says it's worried that Renault could sell those shares to someone else. And we would add that Honda probably doesn't want Renault or the French government sticking their noses into its business. But right now, Nissan doesn't have the cash to buy out Renault, so Honda would probably have to pony up the money or get the Japanese government to arrange some kind of financial deal. There's a worldwide shortage of people that work on cars, so Nissan is tapping into China's massive population for help. It signed a memorandum of understanding with a public vocational school in China that will train students to work on Nissan cars, including EV repair. But this is not your typical training course. In Phase 1, students will study in China for 3 or 4 years, learning basic maintenance skills, but they'll also be taking Japanese language courses. In Phase 2, they get 6 months of language training in Japan, followed by 3 years of technician courses in Japan. And once they complete the program, they'll be offered jobs at Nissan dealerships in Japan. Hey, are robots really going to take over factory jobs and then maybe move on to taking over the world? That's what we're going to be talking about on Autoline After Hours later today. We've got Ed Marchese from ABB Robotics, one of the global leaders in industrial robots, coming on the show today. We're also going to have Lindsay Brooke, longtime automotive journalist, along with us. And this is going to be a great discussion that you won't want to miss. So, join John and Gary when the show goes live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. But that's a wrap for this show. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you later.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Intrepid Control Systems. Over-the-air engineering boost your game. And by Teijin Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility.
There's nothing wrong with heavy metal.
Hey, lighten up.
But with world-class composite material, Teijin Automotive Technologies makes vehicles lighter, safer, and more eco-friendly.